Dr. Perry, welcome back.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. I've always been looking forward to coming back, and to be asked back to do it again is just an ultimate compliment, for which I am very appreciative. Thank you.
Well, when I met you, I told you were going to be one of my regulars, so congratulations, you're my first comeback guest.
Well, let me suggest to you, let me compliment you on your excellent judgment.
I do get it wrong sometimes, but that's okay. So the reason I wanted to call you back is, people in my family, people in other people's family, even some of the people that I meet out in the streets, a lot of the things that come up is that they have elderly people that have to take care of them.
Yes.
And so it's a tough thing to do and to deal with.
It is.
Especially if you're a newbie at it, we only have.
Well, furthermore, it's very difficult for people who have elderly people in the family, and the people who are now supposed to be looking after the elderly people in the family are entirely too young or too inexperienced to figure out what to do.
Yeah, well, you grow up all your life with your parents taking care of you, then you have to start taking care of your parents.
Exactly. And just to give you a sense of perspective of which you probably are already quite familiar, now what happens if a baby is born to a family, whatever that is, you may be unaware that in excess of something in the neighborhood of 150 people who've been born are born to fatherless families. Meaning now we have a family arrangement where the mother's there, but the father is not, for all kinds of reasons. And then if you just look at a population of people who are African American and they make babies, the numbers go even much higher. It's 85% of all black babies are born to fatherless families. So the reality is that it's very difficult to figure out in your family of origin. If you're this young and the parents are still this young, or perhaps the grandparents are, very often the younger people really haven't got a clue how to best attend to their grandparents, and so on and so on.
Yeah, and I see the difficulties because, like you said, it's not something that you're born with. And there's not a course you can take. It just kind of hits you in the face when it's there.
Right. And the reality is, we know for sure, is the more that families have intact mom and dad in the family, you're going to have a better outcome for all kinds of reasons, because now you have a father being father-like and you have a mother being mother-like. And then if the parents are really reasonably good parents and behaving like what you and I would call responsible adults, then they are going to be operating from a baseline that is a lot easier for the kids growing up to figure out how to behave like that.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you have a father and a mother, then you have the disciplinarian and also the nurturer.
Exactly.
And you need both.
That's exactly right.
If you nurture too much, baby gets spoiled. If you discipline too much, then he's antisocial. So you need the balance of both. Dr. Perry, what are some of the signs that people can see when they start, seeing a parent, a grandfather, or something that they look like they start need a little bit more help than just coming over and just talking to them?
Well, what I would say to you is, unfortunately, most young people in a family are really unaware of, and quite frankly, bewildered on what they're supposed to be doing when it comes to looking after the elderly members of the family. And as you well know, very often with certain kinds of family arrangements, you have young children that are, let's say, now in junior high. And then you have the older people that are much older for any number of reasons. Some of the time because the parental figures that are looking after the kids are grandparents as opposed to parents.
Because one of the parents is not in the household, so the grandparents have to take over.
Any number of reasons, and yet at the end of the day, one of the single biggest indicators, in my opinion, which really help you become functional and good citizens and you become good initiative and role models for a family unit, is that whole notion that, gee, if the kids, if you are one of the kids that was made by the mom or the dad, then you really do have a responsibility to look after the mom and the dad when they're older. And most people don't get that, don't think it's necessary. And so at the end of the day, what I would say is, in order to deal with, to make a family a highly functional one where everybody's contributing in one respect or another, the more that the family unit is actually emotionally committed to attending to each other, both in terms of their ability to be educated and or their ability to be physiologically squared away, or their ability to remember that, gee, if mom and dad brought up the kids to this period of time, then the kids have a responsibility to be responsible for either the parents or the grandparents.
That
and a lot of people to have no idea what that means.
Well, that sounds really nice and profound, but I don't think societies right now are letting you have that. They don't give you the responsibilities. They're not teaching responsibilities. They're not teaching accountability in our society.
Right.
At schools, universities, even in the homes, even in social media, anywhere. It's always I call it like helicopter parenting, where
to be sure,
it's never the kid's fault. It's always somebody else's fault, and so they never learn responsibility.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. And one thing that I can tell you that I was very pleased to learn early on in my life, which has benefited me enormously and throughout my whole life, is that I was very fortunate to have a mother that, while she certainly was less than the best mothers in the world, she certainly taught me everything about being disciplined. And so I learned I have to show up and follow through and do what I say I was going to do. And, I had to learn how to do that. And I thought, well, it's now standard procedure for me all these years later. So, for example, I have a mother-in-law who I just adored. She's in her 90s. And I love her. I think she's wonderful. And does she need me to help her? Yes. Does she need me to help her most of the time for all kinds of dimensional reasons? The answer is yes. And so would I even dream of looking after this mother-in-law who I really adore? She's just so funny in many respects, but I know she's ill-equipped to take care of herself in her 90s.
Right.
And so therefore, I step up and do it with complaints. The answer is no.
How do you balance the task of taking care of a 90-year-old woman with giving her independence and making her feel like she's part of a community, like you said, part of the family, without imposing yourself too much as to tell her what she needs to do and not to do? How do you cross that line?
Oh, that's a really good question. First thing, as you know, I'm a clinical psychologist.
Yes.
So I spent a lot of time over the last 50 years teaching people how to be by far better citizens, teaching people how to be physiological functioning, to learn how to lose weight, to learn how to create good relationships. It's all about the whole dimension of what's necessary to be functional in any division of your lifetime.
Right.
So if that's what I teach people to do, which I do, then I can tell you that a whole bunch of people haven't got a clue on how to do that. And so what ends up happening is I help people learn how to, for example, if they're married, I help people learn how to get along with each other if they're married. Quick example. Could we say, prior to getting married, if you think you've asked this person to marry you and that person says yes, could we say you're going to go through what most everybody goes through before they get married, and it's called the courtship.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So here's the question. Having the courtship, is that something that's really pretty important, particularly during the period of time in which you are in a courtship?
Well, absolutely. That's how you get to know each other.
Well, now you're confusing this with common sense and logic.
Well,
okay. So here we go. Could we say during courtship, for most people, before they get married, it's anywhere between a few weeks to several months. That's generally the period of the courtship.
Right.
Okay, so here's the question. When you are in the middle of the courtship, are you generally on your best behavior?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Otherwise, the other girl's not going to like you. Or
Oh, that. Yeah. So could we say you look good, you smell good, you hold her hand, you open the door for her. Those are called manners if you haven't learned those. The point is, if you treat her like you really care about her, you want two things. One, you want her to like you. Yes?
Of course, yes.
Right. And the second thing is you want to be emotionally and often in a relationship, you want to be very cozy together.
Right.
Which means you do things like howl at the moon together. Is that true?
Oh yeah, you put your best face forward.
Okay. So could we say you are on your best behavior and your betrothed, who you haven't married yet, she's on her best behavior, so she looks good, you look good, you laugh, you carry on, you really enjoy each other's attention, all that good stuff. Is that true?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And would you say that's standard procedure for most all people who are in courtship?
I'd say over 90%.
Okay. So, by the way, you're absolutely right, because I've been dealing with this subject matter with couples.
Yeah.
I've lost count how often this goes.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. Help me understand, you may have to guess here, my friend. Help me understand why something in the neighborhood of 95% of all courtships drop the courtship after the wedding.
Why? Because they feel security. Now they have the ring. Now they have the stability of being married, and now they can let themselves be true to who they are.
Sounds real good.
Which is counterproductive.
That's right. And it's counterproductive
because you're not seeing the person for who they really are.
Okay, so could we say the courtship really solidifies in the beginning of the relationship the quality of the relationship, whether it's attending to children if you want them, or whether it's dealing with the grandparents, or it's making sure if you do have kids by this time they got to go to school and do well. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to suggest to you is, it fair to conclude that after the marriage, after the wedding, is it fair to conclude that continuing the courtship seems to be a gimme?
Well, absolutely.
All right, so,
Yeah.
here's the question.
Yeah.
Would you like to know Dr. Perry's quick, overwhelming solution to all marriages?
Sure. What is it?
Restore the courtship. That's all you do.
Oh, you mean go to the movies? Go to dinner?
Everything from anytime you go anywhere with your
Yeah.
spouse, hold hands in public. Every time,
Yeah.
hold hands.
Yeah.
Next,
I agree with you.
then you take her to the car. Now, a lot of young people are clueless about this one. Did you, growing up, learn like I did manners?
Yeah, absolutely. You open the car door, you make sure her dress is not in the way, and you close the door.
Okay, so could we say manners seem to be a gimme?
For our generation, yes.
Okay, and so what's happened to manners anymore, do you guess?
I guess, and I mean, I'm not out there dating or trying to court anybody right now, but I guess that's pretty much out the window.
And it's out the window because?
Society, the way people react now, it's you trying to be, men are equal to women, so why should a man open the car door for the woman?
Okay.
It's feminists. Feminists are the ones that are
that certainly has contributed to the problem, because 40 years ago they started reading all the stuff about feminism.
So what do you think it is?
I think it's a whole bunch of, I don't need to do that now.
But that's important to do that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Once again, you are confusing this with common sense and logic. So here's the deal.
Yes.
Does the woman want attention?
Of course.
Does she want it from you?
Of course.
Okay. Does she want to hold your hand in public?
Yes.
If you dress up and look pretty good, would she prefer to dress up as well?
Of course.
If you dress up like a slob, which a lot of guys dress up like slobs. What's the attraction, by the way, of pants that go all the way down to the middle of your leg?
It's the culture. Maybe people like that now. I don't know.
Okay, so could we say the woman, if the guy is a slob,
yes,
she's less attracted to him?
I would imagine that would be the case.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the next question is, if you dress up on a regular basis during courtship, good idea or bad idea to continue to do that?
Well, yeah, it's a good idea. Of course.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I could go on and on and on. But at the end of the day, if you really want to improve the quality of the relationship, whether you're actually married or not married, it's very important if you really want it to last. And most all quality relationships that last a long time basically have a couple of partners in the relationship where they finally, through lots of trial and error and some tears and some upsets and this and that, what they finally do is they finally get to a level of emotional investment that is so important for their own mental health that they just absolutely make it stronger.
So as a psychologist, what do you recommend people that are courting? Should they let their true colors out so that the other person knows exactly what they're getting into? Or do you suggest that they keep putting their best face forward all the time, even after marriage?
Well, let me put it to you this way.
Dr. Perry, believe it or not, but sometimes when we wake up in the morning, our breath's a little stinky. And so, we're not perfect all the time.
That's correct. So what's the solution to stinky breath?
Well, go brush your teeth.
Oh, I'm sorry. You apparently know these solutions.
Well, it's a metaphor.
Here's another one.
Sure.
During courtship, are you generally either nasty or rude to her?
No, during courtship, you're trying to be a prince.
Okay, so the next question is, what would produce you to have impulses to be nasty and rude?
Energy coming to you is the energy that you put out. So if somebody is rude to you, you're going to be rude back.
You failed manners.
Yeah, absolutely. Or the other person failed manners, and then that gets reciprocated.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't this seem to be what I will call the obvious?
Yeah, you're talking a little bit too much common sense, Dr. Perry. I don't know.
Well, you know me well enough to know I specialize in helping people get their arms around common sense.
Yeah.
And remember, common sense is very uncommon.
You're right. You're right about that, especially if you put yourself in the social media aspect of everything. There's no common sense in any of that.
No. So let me do another one just to sort of even up the score. Yeah. Is it fair to conclude that if you're like most guys, after you get married, you're going to abandon the courtship?
Well, when you get married, we're talking, a lot of years behind when I got married. I'm kind of using myself as an example. You do tend to change a little bit. You become more yourself. You leave your socks out once in a while. You maybe you don't wash your hands when you're supposed to. So yeah, everybody becomes more of their natural selves.
So could we say doing that stuff that is essentially common sense and obvious, if you abandon that stuff, it's counterproductive?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it is counterproductive. But let me tell you to the other extreme, though. If you're constantly trying to overdo everything.
We're not talking overdo it.
Okay, but sometimes you're tired and you don't want to wash your hands. You just want to sit there and drink your beer without washing the hands.
Okay, what happens if your hands are stinky?
If they're stinky?
Yeah.
Well, you don't smell them. You just put a pin on your nose and you drink your beer. I'm just kidding, Dr. Perry.
Could we say standards go down directly proportional to your unwillingness to actually do what's required?
Right, but what is required is the fine line and the balance.
Who makes up that decision?
The mutual people.
The mutual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Something that my wife does, I'm okay with. That's okay. You don't have to be an exemplary wife, and I don't have to be the exemplary husband.
I'm not suggesting you have to be even remotely close to perfect.
Right. But don't be a slob.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Do you know anybody who likes a slob?
No.
Let's do another one. When you were in high school, this one, by the way, this is something that
You're going way back, Dr. Perry.
I know. Could we say, when you were in high school,
Yes.
and we're close to the same age, could we say that in high school there were two types of girls
Yes.
and there was one type of boys?
Okay.
There were good girls that didn't and bad girls that did.
Okay.
And could we say there was one type of boy, all boys did?
Well, they tried.
Exactly. So once
Yeah.
again, fantasies are kind of fun,
Yeah.
regardless of the fact that they don't pay off.
Right.
All right. So why is it that girls in high school, when you and I were in high school, why is it that girls wanted to look good, they dressed well, they generally wanted to be funny and attractive and who's the cutest girl and all that kind of stuff. And in addition to that, how much did girls in high school seem to want to get Prince Charming?
Well, I'd say most of them, the girls like the attention. So they're trying to get the attention from the best suitor.
So could we say that most girls in high school then, this is easily 50 years ago, they looked good, they smelled good, they were laughing and carrying on, and they were almost always looking for the Prince Charming.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So could we say boys during that period of time, 40 years ago, could we say boys just assumed, not all of them, but certainly a good percentage of all those guys, when they were in high school, thought it was a gimme to go to college? I exist, therefore I go to college.
Yeah, I would say a lot of the people that age thought that, yeah.
Okay. I did. I mean, I graduated high school and boom, I went to 12 years of college after that.
Yeah.
So
I had a different path.
everybody does.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the idea that you wouldn't go to college would be, at that time of your life, that was unthinkable.
Well, to some people it was, but to other people it wasn't.
How about more than half of them?
I would agree with you with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So could we say boys growing up wanted to qualify for a really attractive partner? Yes?
Of course, yeah.
All right. So could we say the boys wanted to go to school and the girls wanted to get Prince Charming?
Yes.
Okay. What's happened in the last 40 years?
What's happened in the last 40 years?
Yeah.
Expectations.
And?
Expectations are dropped, and then I don't have to be a prince because I can get my dopamine hit, not by talking to a girl, but I can get it from a laptop, from a computer.
So if I understand this correctly, during courtship, you were only too happy to produce the courtship behavior.
Yeah.
But then somehow after you got married, you said the hell with it.
Well, some people do.
How about most people?
You think it's most people? I don't see it. I
Well,
don't see it
let
in
me
my
ask-
circle.
Let me
Yeah.
ask you this. My love, for example, we've been together a long time.
Okay.
She realized that my background was, as you may remember in our last podcast, you talked to me about playing in the band, and I was
Yeah.
always in the band, and I still play. And so she came up to me one day when I was in a hotel where I knew the band, and I was looking at the band, and she looked at me and she said, "Let me guess, you want to play in the band?" And I said, "Well, yes." She said, "And you probably want to dance too, don't you?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I don't know how to dance." And I said, "I know." And so she said to me, would you teach me how to dance?" And I said, "Of course I will." Well, here it is, many decades later, and we still, one, take dancing lessons.
Good.
And secondly, get this, we will be in the middle of the supermarket, and if the Muzak that's playing up above plays our song, we will start dancing right there next to the
The bananas and the apples
That's right,
and the lettuce.
that's right. What's interesting about that is it has to be, of course, a song that I can dance to. And she and I now are really good dancers.
That's
We
cool.
just love it. So do you know the single biggest thing that women really like in a man? First, more than anything else.
The first thing that they like from a man?
Yeah, what they want if they think a man's a particularly wonderful guy. What does she like, or what she's most attracted to? Well over half the time.
Well, I would imagine it's knowing that the man's going to protect her no matter what, with money, with power.
That's secondary.
Given the what is the primary thing?
He makes me laugh.
Laughter.
Yeah, he makes me laugh. I've lost count in my 60 years of doing this.
So what if you live in a trailer with no money to spend on groceries, but you make her laugh? That's okay?
Oh, God, yes.
That's better than the opposite?
I've lost count in my 60 years of doing this. I've lost count of all the women who will walk into my office and they want some help, and they're either in tears or they're anxious or they're uppity or they're angry or whatever it is. And very often they will walk in with this kind of a look on their face. Hi, Dr. Perry.
Wow.
And then I'll say, let me guess, you met a man. And she will say, yeah. And I'll say, oh. And tell me about him. And so she would tell me. And then I say to her, didn't you tell me last week about this guy that you think is pretty dreamy? First off, he makes you laugh. Is that right? Oh, yes, he makes me laugh. And I said, but last week you told me he just got out of prison. And she said, oh, no, that was a big misunderstanding.
Oh, okay. Okay. He did his time. He's fine.
So the number one thing I'd love to tell you, there's just, it's 100% of the time the way it is. It isn't, but it's pretty damn close to 100%. If you make her laugh, then she's even more drawn to you.
Yeah.
That's number one. Do you know what number two is?
What is it?
He dresses up well.
Wow, so he looks good when he cleans up.
And do you know what the last one is?
I have no idea, Dr. Perry. What is it?
He can dance.
Dancing is one of them?
Oh, God, yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And so when I'm with my love and we're in the supermarket and they fortunately are playing our song, we start dancing next to the pasta.
Should I start learning how to break dance or pop locking?
Well, here's the question.
Yeah.
If you want to have you want to learn how to break dance, you're kind of a little overtime because Soul Train went out of business.
Right.
What I'd say to you though is it's amazing what happens when you take dancing lessons.
Yeah.
And by the way,
yes,
if you're going through courtship and then you think you want to get married, do you know the single biggest thing that the woman wants to make sure happens prior to the wedding?
That the groom show up, I would imagine.
Well,
I don't know.
no, it's that.
That's pretty important.
You got to make sure the groom is going to agree to the usual amount of acceptable lessons, which is 5 to 7 dancing lessons, which really don't result in any quality at all. You ever been to weddings where you watch people dance and they start having popcorn and they just jump up and down all the time, or they just have a seizure or something as opposed
Dr. Perry, I'm a musician. I've seen all this.
I know. So the point is, number one is he makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Number two is he dresses well. Number three is he can dance.
He can dance. Wow.
And the last one is he comes to his own conclusion, perhaps initially thinking what a stupid thing to do. He comes to his own conclusion, and he listens to something I say, and I say, look, if you want to make it work and you want to make it last for a long period of time, restore the courtship.
Yeah, that's important. This all makes sense. The part of where you say you have to make her laugh.
Yes.
You cannot accomplish that without having stability in the home.
Well,
because if you're unstable in the relationship, there's nothing you can say to make them laugh because they're living a terrible life.
Oh, to be sure. I'll give you a perfect example. You've done this 1,000 times. You are out in public.
Yeah.
And people are having lunch or they're doing whatever they're doing in public.
Right.
And you will very often notice couples, and you can tell right away that they're married. How can you tell right away?
How can you tell right away? Well, they're comfortable with each other.
No.
How do you tell?
They are not talking to each other. They are not listening to each other. One of them is having their phone stuck in their nose, and at the end of the day, they don't look like they're happy at all. Another example that proves it, see, if you go out in the public somewhere and you think you want to have lunch or breakfast or whatever it is, very often you will look at a couple and you can tell that she's way overweight.
What does that mean when they're overweight?
Well, think about it. I mean, I'm going to tell you, but
I want you to tell me. What do you think that is?
That's medicating with food.
Medicating with food.
Yes. Why would women be medicating with food?
You don't think they're just really hungry because they had a really rough day?
No.
No. Okay. Why?
Well,
why?
Go back to high school. How many women in high school were really fat?
Well, not many. And in our time,
that's right.
Now there's a bunch of them.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Because there's body positivity now. Every
no.
Big women are beautiful. Is what they say.
Yeah. Well, no, that isn't it. They're medicating with food.
Okay.
Why would women now be medicating with food?
I don't know.
Guess.
Probably they're not happy with something.
That's right.
They're not happy with the way they look on their Facebook page. They're not happy with the likes that they're getting when they post something.
Exactly right. Have you ever watched comedy movies?
Yeah.
Or you'll watch people who will illuminate something about the living together arrangement.
Right.
Okay. Do you ever notice periodically she will get very upset?
Yeah.
When she gets very upset, where does she go? Well over half the time.
Well, if you're looking at the movie, she goes to the refrigerator and see what she can gobble down.
Exactly. So could we say she will get to the bedroom and she'll have her ice cream,
chocolate,
whatever it is,
cookies,
and then could it also be that she will get a girlfriend and they'll both start shoveling it in? Why is she doing that? Why is she eating and then getting bigger and bigger and bigger? Why?
Well, I imagine, like you said, it's the dopamine that they need from eating all that stuff. All that food, their medication.
I've studied this stuff for years.
But Dr. Perry, let me ask you a question. Why is it more prevalent in women that do that instead of men?
Okay.
Or do men do it also, and I just don't know about it?
Do men
medicate with food? Yeah.
The answer, the percentage of women who do it is huge. Just
right.
All you got to do is walk around in public and see what you see. But
there's a lot of fat dudes out there too.
To be sure,
yeah.
It's just that who appears to be bigger?
Well, yeah, I guess.
You haven't paid any attention.
No, not really, but yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah. So could we say
do men medicate more with like alcohol?
Yes.
Instead of food?
Yes.
Because they come home and they don't want to deal with problems or whatever, and so they just.
All right. So let me just give you another one. Remember, I told you about you restore the courtship and you keep the courtship going, and
yes.
all of a sudden you really enjoy your partner and you're going the extra mile. And the more you behave like a partner in a marriage, that clearly indicates care, regard, patience, understanding, reinforcement, laughter, all that good stuff. I mean, could we say you could deliver that if you wanted to?
Right.
Okay, but do most people do that?
Of course not.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
So the way you actually do something about this is as follows. This is, I was looking at yesterday at the debates.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I am too. But the point is, this is all the same stuff. The same stuff. Could we say, if you're on your best behavior and you want a courtship and you are operating from a really good courtship, is that good?
Yes.
Okay. So could we say that the more she feels loved, cared, emotionally safe, she's getting the attention she wants, she's dressing up wonderfully, and she's so pleased because you're so much of a Prince Charming. If you're doing all of that, is that a good return for you?
Of course it is.
Of course it is.
Because you're creating good energy and you're going to get good energy back.
All right. So back again to, if you dress up, do you change your behavior when you dress up?
Well, yes.
In what way?
Well, you're a little bit more careful. Like if you're going to eat, you're going to make sure you're sitting correctly.
Yeah.
Make sure you don't get anything on your clothes.
Yeah. And
so,
do you behave with greater care?
Of course.
Okay.
Because you're feeling good.
And whose choice is that?
Well, it's the choice of your own self. You chose to dress up for the occasion, to please your wife, to go to the party, to watch the game.
Since I looked at the debates last night, I was noticing that the single biggest thing that once again illustrates what's so important for anybody, regardless of your gender, regardless of your size, regardless of your background. The single biggest thing is, if you want to be functional and you want to be a good citizen and you want to look in the mirror and feel pretty good about what you see, and you want to look at your spouse or your lover or whoever it is, and it's a wonderful experience, and you just can't wait to be with each other.
Right.
If all that's going on, how much would you say that everybody who's doing just that invariably are only too willing to take responsibility for themselves?
Well, if you're taking the time to, look good and be presentable, I mean, it's all on you.
Well, how about even if you're not all dressed up?
Well, it's all on you anyway.
So is it fair to conclude to be a fully functional person where you look in the mirror and you feel pretty good about what you see, and then you got some pretty wonderful relationships around which you feel emotionally safe?
Yeah.
Which, as you know anything about women really want to be emotionally safe.
Absolutely.
Okay, so is it fair to conclude that in order for you to do whatever you think you need to do to contribute to a quality family relationship, or that which is one where people have a love connection, is it fair to conclude that the more you pay the freight, the more you assume taking responsibility for your behavior, for your emotions, for your circumstances, for your financial condition, blah, blah, blah. Could we say at the end of the day, the more you take responsibility,
absolutely,
you're probably going to be a by far more functional person than if you don't?
Well, that goes with everything, Dr. Perry. Whether you're building
that
a
could
business,
be obvious.
Though you're building a business, you're building a relationship, you're raising your child, you're raising your grandchild, you're trying to do a podcast, you're trying to make your car function.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to get a lot if you don't put a lot into it.
Okay, once again, you're pointing out the obvious.
It's energy in, energy out.
Here's the question:
they haven't figured out fusion yet.
Most people get that?
No.
Exactly.
No, because they want to put a little energy and get a lot out of it.
So could we therefore back again to restore the courtship?
Yeah.
Back again to pay whatever freight you need to pay to get stuff done.
Right.
And it's kind of I exist, therefore I am responsible. Mm-hmm. If you just think about that, do most people understand I exist, therefore I'm responsible?
I'd say most mature people do.
Well, the next question is...
But how many mature people are there?
Exactly right.
So, no, and that's something that you have to learn at a young age to...
Here's another one.
To make yourself a functioning part of the society.
Exactly right.
To get those morals and those values. If you don't get them when you're a certain age, you're going to be a 60-year-old child that never grew up.
Exactly right. And would it surprise you that a huge population of people that I treat on a regular basis are people who still, as adults, don't get it?
Whose fault is that?
It could be anywhere between the people who are not willing to accept responsibility, or it could be the parents who never taught them anything. It could be the grandparents who didn't teach them anything. It could be any number of reasons.
Their community.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, poor me.
Yeah.
You know, how about this? All these people who are homeless.
Yeah.
Okay. Every time I look at a homeless person, I'm amazed how often, they'll ask for money. Mm-hmm. And then I'll say, you're whining about the fact that you are homeless, and yet who did this to you? Perhaps you did this to you.
Yeah. Well, not 100% of the time they did that to themselves.
Exactly right.
I mean, there is that one person that got a couple of bad breaks, but he wasn't ready for those bad breaks.
If I think about my lifetime,
yeah,
has everything been smooth sailing? The answer
absolutely
is
not.
No.
It never is.
So the point is, have I had some great successes? The answer is yes. And have I made some stupid mistakes? Yes. And have I had to clean up the mess? Yes.
Right.
But to abandon the responsibility of my own conduct
is
ridiculous.
Well, yeah, you're responsible for your own actions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Apparently you get it.
Well, sometimes, Dr. Perry, sometimes I don't.
I don't.
But go back to when we started this podcast. I wanted to ask you about the elder care.
Sure.
So
Okay.
can we go a little bit into that?
Absolutely.
What are some of the signs that you see with the older generation, our elders? What are some of the signs that families should look out for where they can see that they need a little bit extra attention and a little extra care?
First, how often?
Either through depression or balance, or you see that they're losing weight or that they're not
That's
looking right.
There are any number of reasons why older people are more unhappy. Now, some of them are smart and capable and have learned the lessons they need to learn, and they're pretty easy to be around. Having said that, there's two other groups of people out there. A whole bunch of people who say, I'm not important anymore, or nobody cares about me anymore, or I live paycheck to paycheck, or you don't understand how difficult it's been, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the woe is me person.
That's right. And that gets awfully tiring, particularly with older people. Mm-hmm. Why is it more prevalent often with older people?
Why? Maybe they feel insecure. They didn't prepare themselves right for their old age. So now they're seeing the fact right in front of them where, oh, shit, I didn't do what I needed to do. Now I'm in a pickle.
Okay, so what you meant to say was, oh, golly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, golly.
I know. So what I would say to you is this, back again to take responsibility.
Uh-huh.
All right. When you were in high school, I'm guessing you experienced what I did, which now doesn't appear to be standard procedure at all. But when I was in elementary school, we were given a bank statement, and then we were told to start putting change in it so we could learn how to ultimately deposit our change into a bank arrangement.
So they taught you how to balance a checkbook.
No, they just told me that it's important for me to save money.
Oh, like a piggy bank.
Yeah, like a piggy bank.
You did that through your school?
Yes, I did.
They didn't teach me that.
Well,
My parents taught me that. They bought me a little piggy bank. It was actually a pig.
my dad taught me that.
And I would put it in my dresser, and then he would come home. He would have a nickel, a dollar, whatever.
Whatever it
and I'd
was.
stick it in there.
Okay, so
and then on my birthday, if I wanted to, I could break it.
could we say that habit seemed to be just as reasonable as daily brushing your teeth?
Yes, it's very important.
Okay, how much do people get that?
Some people do. Most people probably don't.
Most people don't.
Yeah, they live for the now.
That's right. I want
And a
it
piggy
now.
bank is not for the now.
I know.
Piggy bank is for
and
the
so
future.
Is there any relationship at all between the fact that people are whining that they don't have much money? I live paycheck to paycheck. It's very difficult. You have no idea what I've gone through.
Yeah.
Could we say that's pretty standard procedure for people who never decided to set aside money in the first place?
Well, yeah.
I'll give you a quick story.
Sure.
One that I have a certified public accountant who's been looking after me in my finances and my career for the last 50 years.
Dr. Perry, can you pause just 1 second? I need to get a drink. Would you like a water? Let me get you a water or a juice or.
Is there time to powder my nose?
Yeah, if you want to, we can take a little break.
That'd be great.
Okay, we'll come back.
Good.
We're back.
Have you ever heard of a guy who wrote a book called How to Win Friends and
How to win friends and influence enemies, or
people? Friends. Win friends and influence people.
yes, I've heard of it. I don't know who read it though. Who wrote it?
Okay. I imagine if you can, keep that in the back of your brain and see if you can look it up.
Okay.
That book has been rewritten easily 15 times over the last 60 years.
But you put a different title on it.
Well, yes.
Same idea.
That's exactly right. So, one of the things he said, this guy, which has stuck with me my whole life, is what do you suppose is the single biggest thing that people want out of life if they are going to either be successful or not so, or they're going to be miserable, or they're going to be broke, or whatever it is. What do you suppose is the single biggest thing that feeds them to feel better about who they are?
Depends on the age. You're talking about deathbed? You're talking about...
No, we're talking about, let's say, starting with adolescence.
Adolescence?
And then we'll talk about the rest of their lives.
I think we go through stages when we were growing up.
To be sure, having
Yeah.
said that, what do you suppose is the biggest thing that people want? It's so obvious, you'll probably have trouble getting your arms around it.
It would probably be stability. And,
That's part of it.
it's having enough resources to do what you need.
That's part of it. And yet, this one is overwhelmingly more important to people.
Okay, I give up, Dr. Perry. I can stop guessing now.
It's the need that everybody out there wants to feel important.
Right?
That's number one.
It's probably number one with people our age too. We want to leave our legacy behind.
Exactly right. So if that's the case, that most all people want to feel important,
Right?
then is that something they really want and feel emotionally malnourished if they don't feel important?
Yeah.
And is it also possible that people want some kind of status or want some kind of recognition or want some kind of, here's one. Have you ever invited people over to the house and then they don't reciprocate?
Where they don't invite you to their house?
Right.
Yeah, but I don't see that as a bad thing.
Well, here's the question.
Uh-huh.
If you're always in doing the inviting and always paying for the party, all that good stuff. And
yeah.
And they
that's-
never reciprocate.
Yeah.
Do you feel important?
We call those gorrudos in Spanish. Muchers.
So could we say
Yeah.
you probably don't want to play with them anymore because they're doing nothing to make you feel important while you are picking up the tab for the party?
Yeah, that's not, no, you have to have a little bit back. You have to give and take.
Here's the question.
That's life.
Assuming you're a fully functioning grown-up, do you think it's
Yes.
a gimme that you would invite someone over?
Yes, of course.
Yes, of course. That's exactly right.
Yeah. But people don't?
No? Do people do it? Yes. But they do it a lot? The answer is no.
Wow. That's not a very good way to live.
Oh.
Because if you're always a taker, you're never a giver.
So
nobody's going to want to invite you to their house.
So if you think being a giver is generally more effective than
Yes.
being a taker,
Yes.
then the question is, if you are a taker, do most people want to make you feel important?
No, of course not. You're a weight.
So back again to, I love you, or I like you, or I come over, do you want some coffee? Let me attend to you.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what makes all things work is when whoever is in charge or whoever is trying to make their life to be by far more satisfying, invariably it's a gimme that they would take responsibility.
Correct.
Whatever the responsibility is, you just shut up and do it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, like I said earlier, if you don't put any energy into something, it's not going to give you anything back. That goes with paying for the tab once in a while or receiving the gift that somebody wants to give you.
Exactly.
You got to give and take.
To be sure. But the point is,
Yeah.
do most people do that?
I would hope so. I mean, I do. I try. I mean, at least. Maybe I subconsciously don't do it sometimes, or maybe I overdo it in other times, but I try my best to be as balanced as possible.
So could we say, one, you keep let's just do the marriage.
Yeah.
You keep the courtship going.
Right.
That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, then you attend to people that matter and you call them to say hello, or you send them a thank you note, or
Right.
you send them some kind of a gift because look what they did for you.
Right.
But the point is,
You acknowledge them.
that's right. So from your point of view and my point of view, that probably is a gimme. Is that right?
Yeah.
Do most people get that?
I hope so, but You telling me that they don't?
They don't.
Wow.
Well, let me ask you this. How much do young people know about all that stuff?
Well, I try to teach my child, my son, I try to teach the baby, his son, that we need to, sharing, that's a big part of it. If you do something, you reward them. But if they want something, then they have to do something to get it. I mean, you just don't give it to them.
Translated, they have to pay the freight. Just
Yes.
like anybody would have to pay the freight.
Yeah.
And that's a gimme, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, if you're out in the woods, and it's a cold night out, you can't just say fire and the fire is there. No, you have to go spend energy getting the twigs.
So could we say the vast majority of what you're talking about is
Yes.
pointing out the obvious?
Yes.
And could we also say it taking responsibility of the obvious?
Yes. And you think there's people out there that don't see that? Am I
What's
living
your
under a
guess?
cave? Am I living under a cave?
How many people are homeless?
A lot.
And what are they doing?
Well, they're coming to California because it's free stuff over here.
Translated, they're getting something for
Something
nothing.
for nothing. They're
Right.
being weights. They're being consumers, not putting anything out.
They're doing nothing other than
Yeah.
whining and belly aching.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're not expending any energy to.
You ever had this
the better
happen? This happens to me periodically. Somebody will come up to me at a gas station and they'll say, "Hey, man, that's a bad ride." Because I like cars.
Yeah.
So they'll say, "That's a bad ride." And I'll say, "Oh, thank you." And then I think, here it comes. So first off, he compliments me on my
On your
car.
ride,
And then he immediately says, "Hey, you got any extra money?"
No, I spend it on my ride. Get the hell out of here.
So you know what I say?
What do you say, Dr. Perry?
Okay. By the way, this may be considered rude. On the other hand, I'll be damned if I'm going to help that person continue to be somebody who will not pay the freight.
Right.
So when they say, "You got any extra change?" I usually say, "Well, as a matter of fact, I do. Thank you so much."
See you later.
Or sometimes I'll say, "Let me see if I understand this. What you want right now is something that I have. In this particular case, you're looking for money.
Right.
In return for which I get nothing."
Sounds fair in his eyes.
So then I say, "How do I say this? Do I have any extra money?" The answer is yes.
But not for you.
Bye-bye. Why? Because if I just keep giving and giving and giving, they learn the first thing about showing appreciation or paying the freight or becoming adult or whatever.
Yeah, it shows them what life is really about.
All right. So now
It's
let's
like
go.
when you go to Yosemite and they say, "Don't feed the bears," because then the bears won't leave.
Right. So let me now talk to you about elderly people.
Yes, please.
If the single biggest need that people have to be met is to feel important, would you say that's generally true?
Yes.
Okay. So if I've been in my profession now for almost 60 years, and the phone keeps ringing, it doesn't ring like it used to, but it still rings, and
Right.
people want this, that, and the other thing. So if that's the case, and they are recognizing me for whatever reason, I read your book, Dr. Perry, or I saw you on television, or I really liked the presentation you made, or whatever it is.
Yes.
The point is, if they recognize me showing appreciation and they're very nice and all that good stuff, am I feeling important?
Yes. They're feeding your ego. They're feeding your fulfilling your legacy.
My need
You're still-
to feel important.
So that's I see it. Yeah.
So if the single biggest need that people have to be met in their lifetime is to feel important, how is it that a bunch of elderly people are so unhappy?
They don't feel important.
And what is it that we, as children of those elderly people, what are we doing that is failing to help them feel important?
we're not giving them the recognition that they require.
And how important is that?
To them, it's the world.
Exactly
it's their
right.
life. So
Exactly
that's
right.
how you keep them out of depression. I didn't ever thought about that. But that's a very good point. It's if you have an elderly person that's not feeling well because they don't feel like they can contribute to this life anymore, one way to make them feel good is to say, no, you do matter.
Or simply saying,
Yeah.
I'm calling.
To ask you a question.
I want to know how you're doing.
Yeah.
And then if I make them laugh, does that help?
Yeah.
Yes. And then I say, what are your thoughts about trying this medication or that medication? As I do
Yeah.
that too. And then I put it in the mail and I send it to them. And I say, now look, I'm sending you this. And this particular medication I want you to take every morning. Are we clear? And they'll say, yes, Dr. Perry.
Mm-hmm.
And then I call them. I say, how's it coming? Well, I really like it. I'm so glad that you sent that to me.
Yeah.
So the point is, this is less about feeding my ego. It's more about helping me to feel important. And the reason I want to feel important is because I'm in the business of helping people get their ducks lined up in a row.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. And I can see where making your elders, giving them their spot. Because elders are full of wisdom. They're full of
Oh, yes.
information.
And very often they will. One thing I love about certain elders is they will watch one of their children really behave badly. Mm-hmm. And then they'll do this, which is code for, well, I figured you were pretty well going to get your backside.
Yeah, I saw it coming.
That's right.
I saw it coming.
And did you do anything about it, Harvey? No. So how's that working for you?
Yeah, how did that work out?
Yeah. So the point is sometimes older people who are unhappy enjoy the misfortune of younger people who are not grown-ups.
Right. They're making them. They're watching them do the mistakes instead of helping them out.
Right. So
Okay.
so the point is
So one of the point is making them feel important. How do you? This is one of the questions that I wanted to ask you. Sometimes when there's an older person in the household, and one or two people in that household are in charge of 90% of their life, by giving them their medication, making sure that they're going to the doctor, and all this stuff, and they don't have the support of the rest of the family. And then the brother that never visits goes there and tells them all the things that they're doing wrong, but not really helping. How do you deal with something like that?
okay. Before I answer that,
Yeah.
what's your guess?
What's my guess?
Yeah. If, for example, you're being the responsible person in the
Okay.
family unit,
Okay.
and you're attending to your great aunt for whatever reason.
Right.
And she seems to be rather pleased because you're paying attention to her because she's dying of loneliness. Loneliness is almost the number one thing that creates the greatest dysfunction in the behavior of all adults. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that, but it makes sense.
Yes, it's loneliness and feeling alone.
Yeah.
So the point is,
Humans like communities
yes, they do. And how often do they like that?
every day.
So
That's why solitary confinement is one of the worst things they can do to
absolutely correct.
you. Yeah.
And yet, having said that, back again to keep the courtship going.
Yeah.
If you keep the courtship going, does your spouse feel important?
Yeah. Yeah, they do. So what do you do with that brother that comes in and says you're doing this and this and this wrong? You should do this, you should do that, but then they just close the door and get out.
Well, let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
How much, since you and I have been working together,
Yes.
how much am I telling you what to do rather than asking you questions?
Well, most of the time you ask me questions, you want me to get the answer out of myself.
And so while I already know the answer,
But
you'll notice the vast majority of the time I'm asking you questions rather than giving you answers.
No, but I like to ask you questions because they're using you as a professional, somebody
To be sure.
that knows the answers.
What I'm trying to suggest to you is, am I preaching to you?
No, you never do preach.
That's right.
It's always a conversation.
So could we say it's easier to swallow whatever I'm doing because I'm asking you questions and you come up with the answers?
Yeah, But I'm saying these are all hypotheticals because there is no elderly person in my household. There is no brother that tells me what to do. I'm just using hypotheticals.
Well, if there is a person or persons in the family unit who are not stepping up and being grown-ups.
Yeah, and I can assure you this is probably very more common than not common.
Oh, absolutely correct.
Where you have one person responsible for that elder, and they're taking all of the responsibilities and all the time and all the energy that it needs, and it's a little overwhelming sometimes for that person.
To be sure.
And instead of somebody coming in and say, hey, how can I help you? Let me take this. Let me do this for you. They start bombarding you with all the stuff that you're doing wrong.
Exactly right. So could we say one option is to keep criticizing and telling them what they are not doing or should be doing or whatever. That's one way of handling it. Mm-hmm. Another way to handle it is to simply ask questions so they can come up with the answers because you're paying attention to them.
Mm. You're making them feel accountable.
Oh no.
Yeah.
This could work.
It might work. I don't know. It should work. Yeah.
I learned this long ago when I first started out. Did I really know what I was doing? The answer is no.
No.
And yet, now I know it's effortless for me now.
Yeah.
And yet, what I've learned over a long period of time is if I give you the answer, you're going to get tired of me. But if I keep asking you questions, you're going to start using your noggin. The more you use your noggin, the more likely you're going to walk away from this meeting and remember some of what we talked about.
Right, because it was my idea. It came out of my brain.
There you go.
So one of the things that I've learned so far, which is very important, is for our elders, make them feel like they belong, like they are still valuable by either their knowledge, their jokes.
That's right.
They're making them, hey, Grandpa, hey, Grandma, can you help me do the dishes? Or we need you to do the dishes. We need you to help me sweep, even if you have to sweep afterwards because they did a terrible job.
To be sure, that's exactly right.
But make them feel like they're contributing.
Yes, that's one way to do it. There's another is Larry. Mm-hmm. Uncle Larry.
Right.
I really appreciate you in this family unit. And yet, I know so little about you. Tell me more about what it was like growing up. Tell me about your life growing up, because I don't know very much about it at all.
Yeah.
You do that to Larry, how's he going to respond?
He's going to respond well.
Because?
Because you're helping him with his legacy.
He feels...
Yeah, he feels important.
Important.
Yes. And somebody wants to know how I did it? That's amazing.
Exactly right.
Let me tell you what I did. Right. So,
by the way,
the other thing that I learned, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that if I'm the person taking care of the elder and somebody comes in and starts telling me how to do it, is don't tell them back. Just put them in the spot and say, well, how would you do it?
That's one way to handle it.
Or do you think you can maybe help me with that?
Ooh, now you're getting careful.
Well,
this could begin to make a difference.
Yeah, so at that point, that other person, if he's really coming from a good spot, he's going to say, yeah, I can help you with that. And then there's your help.
Exactly right.
And if he's a jerk and an asshole and just wants to throw it in your face, and he's going to, I better shut up because he's going to make me do it. Right? So it fixes it both ways.
First thing you have to remember is you probably underestimate, because most people as smart as you do underestimate, the nature of how effective you can be when you want to influence anybody about anything. Mm. And so, for example, what you want to avoid doing is listen to all the criticism. What you also want to avoid doing is just turning on television so you don't have to do anything.
Right.
What you want to do is you want to say, well, how do I pay attention to my 96-year-old mother?
Right.
And how do I help her feel important? And in addition to that, what can I learn from her because she's 96 and I'm not?
Yeah.
So the point is, the more you pay attention to people, the more they feel important. The more they feel important, they are much less likely to be destructive to themselves. They're much less likely to be bitchy and critical of everybody else because they're unhappy. They're much less likely to say, "You don't understand. I'm on a paycheck to paycheck bill."
Yeah, nobody likes a whiner.
Oh God.
Yeah.
And whining. I'm oppressed, and look what they're doing to me. And there's. They're racist and they're this and they're that. Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I want to have a bunch of ice cream.
Give you some medication. Give you some ice cream. About four weeks ago, I did a podcast with my 98-year-old mother.
Yes.
And then we went through kind of like a really brief biography of her life.
Yeah.
From amazing woman. I'm sure it made her feel good that she's giving me the story and talking to me about it, without interruptions, one-on-one in this setting. But I think I got more out of it.
I'm delighted.
Yeah, I think I got more out of it. It really opened my eyes as to what kind of life she led. 98 years old.
You learned something.
Yes.
And the bonus was she felt important.
Absolutely.
Exactly right.
Yeah, so I can see the importance of what you're saying with our elders. Give them their props.
There's another thing, too.
Learn from them.
That I've been doing this with people for years. And this is a compliment or an additional variable you may want to consider given the nature of everything we're talking about.
Sure.
We know that most people, regardless of their age, want to feel important.
Right.
All right. And we know most people generally want attention. Just like your dog always wants attention. Do you ever notice when your dog is wanting attention and you find it irritating, do you ever notice you'll try to ignore the dog and then the dog will come back and do it again?
Yeah, he'll throw the ball at your feet.
So could we say the dog wants attention even when you're being a poop?
Right. Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay, so I always say, look, think about dogs.
Yeah.
Most people really like dogs because they love you even when you're being a poop.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Perry, I really like the points that you brought out with everything that we had today, our talk. Do you want to go a little bit into the debate that we both saw yesterday, or you want to just... I know you're not political. I'm not political. I'm a little political, but not too much. I saw the debate. As far as the moderators, I really liked that the way they did it because there was no interruptions, there was no rudeness. I think they did a really good job.
They were smart enough to be reasonably well-functioning adults as opposed to pulling out their finger and kicking and screaming.
Yes. So the moderators did a really good job, surprisingly, because usually...
That was surprising as far as I was concerned.
Yeah. So I really liked that. And I also liked the fact that they each got their turn to speak without any interruptions for the other person. I think that was really good, too.
I thought that was good, too.
Following the next couple of debates that they have, I hope they follow the same pattern because it was really giving us a lot of information as the consumers.
In terms of a process to go through to make a debate somewhat in the realm of reason, and to give it the ability to keep on having stuff happen.
Yeah. So now the questions questionable, but they were pretty mellow.
Yeah, they were.
They were tough questions.
Yes.
But one thing I did notice is the state of the. Okay, sorry for the distraction.
Oh, perfectly okay.
There was a.
You can edit that out.
Yeah, we'll cut it. That way people know there was an interruption with one of the computers was making a weird noise that kind of distracted us.
Sure.
But anyway, back to, let me ask you the question again, and we can revisit the same thing. We were talking about the debate that we saw last night, our presidential debate with the Biden and Trump. We were talking about the CNN moderators. I think they did an excellent job.
Yes.
As far as handling the debate without interruptions, without trying to show one side to the other.
Yes.
I like the fact that they shut the microphones when one of the people were talking. That way we can actually hear it, no interruptions. Let them go through the whole thought process.
Yes.
One thing that blared out to me though was the state of mind of our current president.
Yes.
I know we get snippets of it with the medias and our in our YouTubes and all of our newscasts and everything, and they always paint a caricature of a feeble old man, and you think, well, that's just the propaganda. But yesterday it came out, and I did see a decline in his mental abilities.
Absolutely correct. Yes.
So how do we get to that point where we have a president that's like that?
Well, that's a really good question. The reason why it's a good question, Alex, is that how often has that ever happened in your lifetime when there are two presidents in this kind of a debate trying to manage their objective was to get enough people that really wanted them to be once again elected.
Yeah.
And the question, could we say it's reasonably likely that there's a much larger population of people who are now pretty well disgusted with both of them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
But not only with the caricature that one side paints of the other person, but actually seeing them in the debate, they really showed them true selves.
exactly. What was unfortunate, there was more complaining and accusing and being defensive, and then that whole issue about who plays better golf. I mean, come on.
Really?
All right. Now, having said that, what I would say to you is as follows. If you look at both of them, whether you like them or you don't like them, did it appear that both of them were behaving like fully functioning grown-ups?
No.
Exactly.
One was mentally not there. The other one was a whiny person.
Well, is it fair to conclude that both of them could have really knocked it out of the park if they were much more concerned about getting their message across that made most everybody say, oh, yeah, I want to follow that guy?
Yeah, I think so. I think if they would have focused on that, they would have come off a lot better.
So,
either one.
right, so
they both missed an opportunity.
Okay, absolutely correct. Okay, so now here's the question. How much do you suppose both of them presented their material to help the listener or the watcher of the debates?
Us.
How much did they make us feel important?
Not very.
So what's that tell you right there?
They're not thinking about us. They're thinking about themselves.
Okay.
How do I get elected?
Okay.
They're not thinking, how do I fix the United States? Because if you listen to the messaging that's going out, I mean, I don't see it in real person, but because most people are very cordial and very nice when you go meet them in person. But if you look at the news and you look at the medias and you look at all the social stuff, it seems like we're against each other. The red team versus the blue team.
So what does that tell you right away?
That they're not very good leaders. They're not uniters.
Okay. All right, so I'll just give you right now, let's go back to the Ronald Reagan period.
Okay.
Do you know what his nickname was and still is? Everybody thought this guy was just it.
I think he was a cowboy, no? Wasn't he a cowboy? What was his
They
nickname?
called him the Great Communicator.
The Great Communicator.
And did you also know that, of course, he's had everything from huge boats and all kinds of additional recognition about how great a communicator he was. Here we go. Let's go back to what we talked about earlier. What is the single biggest thing that women like the best in a man?
Make him laugh.
Exactly.
Did I learn my lesson?
So let's take a look at Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, am I lobbying for you to like Ronald Reagan? No, I'm just trying to suggest to you is, when did you ever hear a candidate for president who was funny?
Ronald Reagan was pretty funny.
Can you think of any other one that was funny?
Obama had a little bit of a sense of humor, but not really that much.
So the answer is the only guy who just cleaned up when he became president again was he was funny.
Yeah.
Do you think that's just coincidental, or he knew how to play that card?
Well, he knew how to play the card, and he had the humor in him. He was a witty person.
Okay, so one, what have we learned out of all our conversation today, whether it's restore the courtship or it's quit medicating with food or it's learning how to help people feel important or all that kind of stuff we talked about? What's really gotten your attention in this conversation around which you're thinking, I either have to think about that or I have to do more of that or I have to do less of that, whatever that is? What got your attention the most?
Well, the attention the most was, just be productive. Don't be a consumer. Give stuff out.
Pay the freight.
Yeah, pay the freight.
Be responsible.
Yeah.
If you are way overweight, let's learn how to lose it.
Yeah.
If you are broke, now you have to learn how to manage money. If you are being nasty to your wife or to your husband,
yeah,
you're going to have to decide to restore the courtship.
Yeah.
And then when you do restore the courtship, what do you do with it after that?
You maintain it
How long?
forever.
That's right. That's exactly
Until
right.
you're dead, until you're 6 feet underground.
I'll give you one other thing I've been doing to guys and occasionally for women for years, and it's always the same. And if you want, by the way, I will ask you to do this with me right now.
Okay.
You're married, yes?
Yes.
Okay, and you have a phone, yes?
Yes.
And do you periodically send your wife a message?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think I've done this with you, have I?
I think we did it last time.
We did.
Yeah.
And do you remember the words that you wanted to say? Just 3 words?
Thinking of you.
Thinking about
Thinking
you.
about you. Yes.
Yeah. Does that feed into her need to feel important?
Of course.
Isn't it funny how that works?
Yeah, and it works great.
That's right. Okay. So the reality is when you are doing just thinking about you and you make it pretty much a standard procedure going forward.
Yeah.
Because could we say that she's going to get upset because you aren't having enough variety in your messages? Or is she going to like it because you're simply feeding her with how important she is?
Well, absolutely. You're making her feel in a comfort zone. You're making her feel important. You're making her feel like somebody cares about
so
her.
if you put it all together,
Yeah.
it's restore the courtship, it's pay attention, it's keep laughing,
Yeah.
it's do what you say you're going to do, it's take responsibility, it's pay the freight. You ask them questions and you quit preaching the gospel according to you.
Absolutely.
And therefore the whole objective is to, 1, help them feel important, and 2, learn lessons by asking them
Asking them what, Dr. Perry?
questions
Yeah,
instead of giving them answers.
right. Well, that works with everybody, not just your spouse. It works
of
with
course
your
it does.
kids, with all relationships.
Of course, isn't it funny how it seems to work with everybody?
Even with our elders, probably better than anybody else. 'Cause it makes
Plus,
them
the
feel
nice
important.
thing about elders is if you ask them questions,
Yeah,
they'll give you answers.
yeah, happily.
That's right.
You might learn something too by listening to them.
Oh, no.
Dr. Perry, it's been a pleasure having you back.
The pleasure was mine. Thank you.
We're going to continue these conversations down the road.
I will definitely do so, and I'm quite confident when we get really brilliant on how to capitalize on this stuff.
Yeah,
I'm going to look forward to you and me having conversations on how to do just that.
we'll figure it out.
I will look forward to it.
Well, thank you for coming by.
Please, thank you.